The saga of the Vikings, explorers, raiders, and founders of legacy. The Vikings were a remarkable civilization born in the cold and rugged lands of Scandinavia. From around the late 8th century to the mid-11th century, they emerged as one of the most dynamic forces in European history. These Norsemen, hailing from what is today Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, did not belong to a unified empire, but were instead bound by shared customs, language, beliefs, and an unyielding spirit of adventure. What began as scattered raids along Europe's coasts evolved into migrations, conquests, and cultural exchange that reshaped entire regions. The term Viking is often misunderstood. It does not refer to a race or ethnicity, but to an activity, specifically raiding and seafaring expeditions. To go a Viking meant to take part in overseas journeys, often involving warfare and plunder. However, only a portion of Norsemen were true Vikings in this sense. The majority were farmers, blacksmiths, traders, shipbuilders, and community leaders. Yet all shared in the rich traditions and deep cultural identity that made Viking civilization unique. The Viking Age officially began in 793 CE with the infamous raid on Lindisfarne, a Christian monastery off the coast of Northumbria in England. The attack was swift and brutal, signaling to Europe that a new force had arrived, one that did not respect conventional boundaries or holy institutions. Churches were looted, monks were slain or enslaved, and precious relics were taken. The shock reverberated across the Christian world, launching the Vikings into infamy. But while these raids made headlines in medieval chronicles, the Vikings were far more than marauders. Their technological ingenuity, particularly in shipbuilding, was unmatched. The iconic Viking longship was fast, flexible, and capable of traveling both deep seas and shallow rivers. With these ships, they could strike without warning and retreat just as quickly. But those same ships also allowed them to explore, trade, and migrate to faraway lands. In fact, the Vikings were among the greatest explorers of the medieval world. They reached places no other Europeans dared to travel. In the west, they discovered and settled Iceland, then pushed further to Greenland. Around the year 1000, Leif Erikson, son of Eric the Red, is believed to have reached North America, in a land they called Vinland. This makes the Norse the first known Europeans to set foot on the American continent, nearly 500 years before Columbus. Meanwhile, in the east, Swedish Vikings, often called the Rus, sailed down the great rivers of Russia, such as the Volga and Dnieper, establishing trade routes between the Baltic and Black Seas. They founded cities like Novgorod and Kiev, eventually giving rise to the Kievan Rus state. These Norsemen served as merchants, mercenaries, and rulers, even reaching Constantinople, where some joined the elite Varangian Guard of the Byzantine Emperor. Trade was at the heart of Viking expansion. They dealt in furs, iron, amber, and slaves, exchanging them for silver, silk, spices, and glass from as far away as the Islamic world and Central Asia. Arabic coins, silk cloths, and even Chinese artifacts have been found in Viking burial sites, revealing an expansive web of commerce. They did not just take from the world, they connected it. At home, Viking society was surprisingly advanced and balanced. Power was decentralized, and most decisions were made through assemblies known as the Thing, where free men could speak, debate, and vote on laws. Viking legal codes, though harsh, were systematic. Blood feuds could be resolved through fines or compensation. Honor was paramount, but vengeance was regulated. Their concept of justice was deeply embedded in community and custom. Women in Viking society also held considerable rights compared to other parts of medieval Europe. They could own land, inherit property, manage businesses, and even initiate divorce. High-born women managed estates and could hold significant influence. While Norse mythology tells of shield maidens, warrior women who fought alongside men, historical evidence is mixed, though some graves with weapons and female remains suggest that warrior women may have existed in rare cases. The religious beliefs of the Vikings were rich, poetic, and deeply woven into daily life. Their gods were many: Odin, the one-eyed god of wisdom and war; Thor, the thunder wielder and protector; Freya, the goddess of love and death; and Loki, the trickster. The cosmology of the Norse involved 9 realms, a world tree named Yggdrasil, and the inevitable doom of the gods at Ragnarok, a final battle followed by rebirth. These stories were passed down orally through skaldic poetry and sagas, forming a deep cultural bedrock. Viking funerals reflected their beliefs in the afterlife. Important individuals were sometimes buried with weapons, jewelry, animals, and even entire ships, to aid them on their journey to the next world. Some were cremated, while others were buried under massive mounds. Their runestones, often carved in memory of lost warriors or great voyages, still stand today across Scandinavia as enduring messages from the past. Despite their warlike image, the Vikings were also builders. They established fortified settlements, towns, and cities. In Ireland, they founded Dublin, which began as a Viking long fort, ship fort, and grew into a thriving urban center. In France, they were granted land by the king and formed the Duchy of Normandy. In England, large portions of the country were once part of the Danelaw, regions governed by Viking law and customs. As the Viking Age progressed, Norse leaders began converting to Christianity, often for political and economic reasons. Conversion was a gradual process, not a sudden shift. Pagan practices continued for generations even after kings adopted the cross. Churches were built atop old sacred sites, and Christian saints were sometimes syncretized with Norse figures. Over time, Viking identity fused with Christian European culture, ushering in a new era. By the mid-11th century, the Viking Age began to fade. Stronger European kingdoms developed better defenses. Scandinavian societies centralized under monarchies. Trade routes shifted. The last major Viking incursion was the invasion of England by Harold Hardrada in 1066, which ended in defeat at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Ironically, later that same year, William the Conqueror, a descendant of Vikings, successfully invaded England from Normandy. Even in their decline, the Vikings had left a permanent mark. Their language influenced English. Words like sky, knife, egg, husband come from Old Norse. Their descendants became dukes, kings, and emperors. Their legal traditions influenced regional governance. Their ships, myths, and artwork inspired generations to come. Modern fascination with the Vikings continues to grow. From archaeological digs to television series, the image of the Viking has captured global imagination. Though often romanticized, their story remains one of extraordinary human achievement. They crossed oceans in wooden ships, defied kings and empires, and left behind a cultural footprint that remains etched into the fabric of the Western world. What made the Vikings extraordinary was not just their bravery in battle, but their vision of life. They embraced the unknown, whether it was in foreign lands or the spiritual realm. Their gods demanded courage, their laws demanded justice, and their sagas demanded memory. In life and in death, the Vikings sought meaning beyond mere survival. They sought glory, legacy, and connection to something eternal. Though centuries have passed since the last Viking sailed the seas, their echoes still ripple through time. Their ships may rest at the bottom of the oceans, and their bones lie in quiet tombs, but their spirit endures. The Viking Age reminds us that human ambition, no matter how rough its origins, can carve new paths, build bridges between worlds, and leave stories that outlive empires.